From university lecture halls to the sacred chambers of the Vatican, the Shroud of Turin has sparked endless debate and deep devotion.
It's a pretty obvious fake.
The shroud completely inspires those who believe in it because Jesus left no physical trace of himself on earth.
Now, crucial evidence has emerged that could rewrite everything we know about this ancient cloth and the man it depicts. Can today's technology finally uncover the truth about its origins and authenticity? Join us on this exciting journey as the Shroud of Turin reveals a shocking truth about Jesus Christ. The Shroud of Turin, often called the Holy Shroud, holds a special place in many hearts, especially within the Catholic Church. It's believed to be the cloth that wrapped Jesus after his crucifixion, featuring an image that sparks wonder and curiosity. This remarkable fabric is about 14 feet long and 3 feet wide, made with a unique weaving technique using flax fibers. The most intriguing part is the faint yet clear image on the cloth. It shows a man from both the front and back, with his hands gently crossed over his lower body. These mirrored images meet at the center of the cloth, facing opposite directions, adding to the mystery. The man depicted has a powerful presence with a beard, mustache, and long hair flowing over his shoulders, suggesting strength and dignity. The image also shows reddish-brown marks matching the wounds described in the Bible from Jesus' crucifixion, deepening the mystery of the shroud. Experts estimate the man's height to be between 5'7" and 6'2", adding another layer of intrigue to this ancient relic. In 1532, a massive fire broke out in a chapel in Chambéry, France, where the cherished Shroud of Turin was kept. The fierce flames scorched the fabric, leaving large holes and burnt edges from contact with molten silver. To repair the damage, dedicated nuns from the Poor Clares order carefully sewed 14 large triangular patches and 8 smaller ones onto the cloth. Their painstaking work was a labor of love to preserve this sacred relic. In the spring of 1898, an Italian photographer named Secondo Pia was granted a rare chance to photograph the Shroud of Turin. This historic moment marked the first time the relic was captured on film, revealing an astonishing discovery. The human image on the cloth became strikingly clear in the black and white negative, much clearer than its natural sepia tone. This finding remains significant, offering deep insights into the shroud's mysteries. Then, in 1931, photographer Giuseppe Enri took similar photos, confirming Pia's results. In 1978, ultraviolet photography further illuminated the relic, uncovering even more of its secrets. Displayed in a church in north-central France, the shroud revealed a negative image with three-dimensional details that no conventional painting could match. In 2022, meticulous conservation efforts in Italy produced a remarkable revelation about the Shroud of Turin. When experts removed the 16th-century cloth backing, they found a unique stitching pattern on the back side of the shroud. The pattern matched one found at the ancient Masada fortress in Israel, providing a compelling connection to antiquity and supporting the shroud's historical narrative, linking it with the era of Jesus' life. As we delve into the story woven into the Shroud of Turin, we walk a path filled with intensity, uncovering poignant moments etched into its sacred fibers. Christ's agony during his final moments is captured in vivid detail. Jesus endured relentless cruelty and suffering, every excruciating detail imprinted on the shroud that later bears testimony to his suffering. Deprived of dignity and subjected to merciless beatings, blows from both blunt and sharp blades lacerated their bodies, tearing them to pieces. Their bodies, once whole, became a canvas of suffering, bruised and damaged by wounds of cruelty. To add to his suffering, soldiers crafted a crude crown of thorns from twisted branches and pressed it onto his brow. Each thorn brought new agony, mingling with the warmth of his blood and staining his garments. Forced to carry the weight of the cross, Jesus' blood-stained clothes clung to his torn flesh as he embarked on a painful journey. Each step was a battle against pain and exhaustion, with the cross digging into his shoulders and worsening his wounds from the scourging. As he stumbled, the weight of the cross crushed him against the ground, his arm twisted unnaturally and dislocated. The soldiers, indifferent to his suffering, yanked him up by his dislocated arm, forcing him to continue the agonizing march. Bent over in pain, his right arm hung limp at his side, a sign of his immense suffering and resilience. Each mark on his body told a story of unparalleled sacrifice, each wound a testament to his love and the magnitude of his pain. His blood-soaked garments were ripped away without mercy, reopening wounds that had begun to stick to the fabric. Helplessly placed upon the cross, soldiers hammered nails into his already dislocated right arm, causing unbearable agony as nerves and ligaments were torn apart. In his final moments on the cross, Jesus endured immense agony as his body bore the weight of his sacrifice. Nails pierced his hands and feet, securing him to the wooden beams. Each breath was a struggle, with the weight of his body making it hard to fill his lungs. Every heartbeat sent waves of pain radiating from his wounds. His parched lips whispered prayers mingled with cries of anguish. As the hours passed, his strength waned and the pain intensified. Every movement sent waves of torment through his body, the weight of humanity's sins pressing down upon him, a burden he willingly bore. Amid his suffering, Jesus cried out, a raw and anguished plea that echoed through the heavens. It was a cry of pain and longing. In that moment, as he surrendered to death, Joseph of Arimathea made a courageous move, teaming up with Nicodemus, another secret admirer of Jesus. Joseph approached the Roman governor Pilate to request permission to care for Jesus' body according to Jewish customs. With Pilate's approval, Joseph and Nicodemus carefully wrapped Jesus' body in linen strips infused with myrrh and aloe. Time was of the essence as they worked tirelessly on the eve of the Sabbath, racing against the clock before the Sabbath rest began. They hurriedly laid Jesus in a tomb Joseph had purchased, situated in a nearby garden close to the crucifixion site. As recounted in the Gospel of John, Simon Peter later entered the tomb after Jesus' resurrection and discovered the shroud along with the napkin that had covered Jesus' head. Interestingly, the napkin remained separate from the shroud, providing a touching detail in the narrative of Jesus' burial and resurrection. Deciphering the mystery of the shroud has sparked decades of scientific debate regarding how its enigmatic image could have been formed. Some scientists hypothesize it might be due to radiation, a type of invisible energy capable of altering materials. Alexander Belyakov suggested it could have been a quick burst of intense light that imprinted the image on the cloth. Others propose special types of radiation like X-rays or ultraviolet rays as possible causes, all agreeing that the source of this radiation came from above the cloth. Paolo Di Lazzaro, an Italian researcher, contributed fascinating theories to this discussion. He believed the radiation, possibly ultraviolet light, was exceptionally powerful, far beyond any ultraviolet light we can generate today. He described it as rapid bursts of light, incredibly intense, akin to billions of watts. Imagine light so swift and forceful that it could create an enduring image on cloth lasting centuries. De Lazzaro argued that because current technology cannot replicate such an image, it challenges the notion that the shroud could have been artificially created in medieval times, as skeptics suggest. For believers in the shroud's sacredness, the explanation is straightforward. Whatever caused the image, whether radiation, ultraviolet light, or another phenomenon, originated beyond our earthly realm. To Christians worldwide, it signifies divine light, associated with Jesus' ascension to heaven, as the source of this extraordinary phenomenon. Alberto Carpentieri, a professor at the Turin Polytechnic Institute, suggests that the image on the Shroud of Turin could have been caused by nuclear emissions resulting from a large earthquake believed to have hit Jerusalem in 33 AD. This theory is intriguing because the Gospels mention a significant earthquake occurring after Christ's crucifixion, which supports Carpentieri's idea. According to his study, neutron emissions produced by the earthquake might have created the image on the shroud. These emissions could also have affected the levels of radiocarbon used to date the shroud, potentially leading to inaccurate dating. Carpentier and his team speculate that the earthquake's intense pressure waves in the Earth's crust could have triggered nuclear reactions. Neutrons emitted from these reactions might have interacted with nitrogen atoms in the linen cloth of the shroud, causing a chemical reaction that formed the image of a face. This interaction could also explain why carbon dating of the shroud has been controversial. In the 1980s, the Vatican took control of the Shroud of Turin and conducted various tests to uncover its mysteries, including its composition, origin, and age. One significant test was carbon-14, dating carried out independently at the University of Oxford, the University of Arizona, and the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. Surprisingly, all three tests, with a high confidence level of 95%, concluded that the fabric dates back to between 1260 and 1390 AD. This means the shroud was created more than 1,000 years after Jesus Christ's death. To support this, researchers pointed out that the radiocarbon dating matches closely with historical records. The shroud was first documented in 1353 when Geoffrey de Charny allegedly brought it to Lyre. Many scholars question the accuracy of the carbon dating conducted on the Shroud of Turin. Chemist Raymond Rogers highlighted significant issues with the results. He found that while the edges of the shroud contained 37% vanillin, a compound that naturally breaks down over time, the main part of the shroud had none. This suggests that the shroud could be much older than the carbon dating suggests. The main problem with the carbon dating, according to Rogers, was the sampling. The Vatican provided small pieces from the corners of the shroud for testing. Rogers argued that if samples had been taken from the center, the dating might have shown an older age. He also noted that the absence of vanillin in the fiber's lignin, a pattern seen in other ancient linens like those from the Dead Sea Scrolls, indicates an older age for the shroud. Based on the vanillin findings, Rogers estimated the shroud could be anywhere from 1,300 to 3,000 years old. This raises doubts about the accuracy of the carbon dating results. In 2011, Salvatore LaRusso and his team from the University of Bologna used advanced digital image processing on photographs of the Shroud of Turin, including a famous negative from 1931 by Giuseppe Enri. Despite their thorough analysis, they didn't find any images of flowers, coins, or other objects on the shroud. In 2015, Italian researcher Barcaccia and his team published a study in Scientific Reports that added a new dimension to the shroud's mystery. They analyzed DNA samples collected from the shroud and its backing cloth during vacuuming in 1977 and 1988. Their research revealed traces of DNA from 19 different types of plants originating from regions like the Mediterranean, Central Europe, North Africa, the Middle East, Eastern Asia, and the Americas. They also found human mitochondrial DNA sequences representing ethnic groups from Europe, North and East Africa, the Middle East, and India. Surprisingly, DNA from non-human sources like various birds and a marine worm from the northern Pacific Ocean near Canada was also detected. These findings provided a global glimpse into the diverse biological materials that have interacted with the shroud over centuries, further deepening its enigmatic history. Researchers studying pollen and dust DNA from the Shroud of Turin made an exciting discovery. The DNA analysis revealed that many different people from various parts of the world had interacted with the shroud over centuries. This diverse mix of DNA doesn't dismiss the idea that the shroud originated in medieval Europe. Instead, it fits well with its historical journey, possibly beginning in the Near East. What's particularly intriguing is that the findings suggest the linen cloth may have been manufactured in India. This new insight adds another layer to the shroud's intriguing history, indicating its origins and travels were more complex and extensive than previously believed. While many researchers admire the image on the Shroud of Turin for its detailed anatomical accuracy, others believe it could be a clever forgery. In 2007, archaeologists discovered a crucified Roman near Venice with heel wounds matching another known victim, Jehohanan. But these wounds didn't match those on the shroud. Additionally, no known crucifixion victims have been found with wrist wounds, even though the shroud shows them. Critics like Joe Nickel in 1983 and Gregory S. Paul in 2010 have pointed out issues with the image's proportions. Paul argued that the face and body proportions on the shroud are unrealistic. He noted that the forehead is too small, the arms are unnaturally long and uneven, and the distance from the eyebrows to the top of the head is incorrect. These features, they suggest, seem more like the work of a Gothic artist than a real human body. In 2018, researchers conducted an experimental analysis of bloodstain patterns on the Shroud of Turin to understand how they correspond to wounds from crucifixion. They found significant discrepancies. For instance, blood patterns on the forearms and back of the hand didn't match, suggesting they occurred at different times, contrary to what would be expected from a genuine burial cloth. Moreover, the blood rivulets on the front of the image didn't align with those on the lower back, even considering multiple bleeding events. These inconsistencies imply that the shroud's bloodstains were likely created intentionally to tell a story, rather than being naturally formed. Additionally, Raymond E. Brown noted that the position of the body depicted on the shroud doesn't allow for the hands to naturally cover the genitals, as shown. This suggests that anatomical features, such as elongated arms and hands, were adjusted to fit a particular narrative. These observations lead some experts to believe that the shroud may not be an authentic relic of a crucifixion, but rather an artistic creation from the Gothic period. Luigi Garlascelli, a professor of organic chemistry at the University of Pavia, claimed to have recreated a full-sized replica of the Shroud of Turin using techniques available in medieval times. He started by placing a linen sheet over a volunteer and rubbing it with an acidic pigment. After aging the cloth in an oven and washing it to remove the pigment, he added bloodstains, scorches, and water stains to mimic the original. However, Professor Giulio Fanti noted that Garlascelli's method did not reproduce the most critical characteristics of the Turin shroud. Garlascelli's reproduction was featured in a National Geographic documentary, but his technique, including using a bas-relief method for the face, resulted in an image that resembled the Turin shroud, but lacked its uniformity and intricate details. Scientists Emily Craig and Randall Bray investigated how medieval artists might have created the Shroud of Turin using a dust transfer technique. They began by drawing a face resembling Jesus on newsprint, using carbon dust mixed with collagen, similar to materials available in the 13th and 14th centuries. After completing the drawing, they placed it on a table and covered it with linen. They then pressed the linen firmly against the newsprint, using a wooden spoon's flat side to transfer the image. The result was a reddish-brown image on the linen that looked remarkably lifelike. It had a three-dimensional quality and showed no brush strokes, appearing as if it could be a genuine imprint of a person. Their experiment demonstrated that it was feasible to create a convincing and detailed likeness using techniques accessible in medieval times. In the dimly lit museum chamber, scholars gathered around the glass case containing the enigmatic artifact, the Shroud of Turin. Dr. Sofia Alvarez, a respected historian and skeptic, studied the delicate fabric with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. As she examined the intricate patterns woven into the cloth, a startling realization dawned on her. The fabric held secrets that could challenge centuries-old beliefs. With trembling hands, she delved deeper into the mystery, uncovering microscopic traces of pollen, DNA fragments, and faint imprints resembling crucifixion wounds. In a moment of clarity, Dr. Alvarez grasped the profound implications of her findings. The Shroud of Turin might not merely be a religious relic, but a tangible witness to the life and death of Jesus Christ. She envisioned her groundbreaking paper titled The Shroud of Turin reveals shocking truth about Jesus Christ, marking the beginning of her quest to unveil the untold story concealed within the folds of time. One of the key debates among scholars studying the Shroud of Turin from a religious perspective revolves around whether it matches the descriptions of Jesus' burial in the New Testament. According to theologians, while the New Testament provides some details about Jesus' burial, it doesn't offer exact specifics. One aspect often questioned is the napkin, which is rarely mentioned. Scientists Emily Craig and Randall Bray investigated how medieval artists might have created the Shroud of Turin using a dust transfer technique. They began by drawing a face resembling Jesus on newsprint, using carbon dust mixed with collagen, similar to materials available in the 13th and 14th centuries. After completing the drawing, they placed it on a table and covered it with linen. They then pressed the linen firmly against the newsprint using a wooden spoon's flat side to transfer the image. The result was a reddish-brown image on the linen that looked remarkably lifelike. It had a three-dimensional quality and showed no brush strokes, appearing as if it could be a genuine imprint of a person. Their experiment demonstrated that it was feasible to create a convincing and detailed likeness using techniques accessible in medieval times. In the dimly lit museum chamber, scholars gathered around the glass case containing the enigmatic artifact, the Shroud of Turin. Dr. Sofia Alvarez, a respected historian and skeptic, studied the delicate fabric with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. As she examined the intricate patterns woven into the cloth, a startling realization dawned on her. The fabric held secrets that could challenge centuries-old beliefs. With trembling hands, she delved deeper into the mystery, uncovering microscopic traces of pollen, DNA fragments, and faint imprints resembling crucifixion wounds. In a moment of clarity, Dr. Alvarez grasped the profound implications of her findings. The Shroud of Turin might not merely be a religious relic, but a tangible witness to the life and death of Jesus Christ. She envisioned her groundbreaking paper titled "The Shroud of Turin Reveals Shocking Truth About Jesus Christ," marking the beginning of her quest to unveil the untold story concealed within the folds of time. One of the key debates among scholars studying the Shroud of Turin from a religious perspective revolves around whether it matches the descriptions of Jesus' burial in the New Testament. According to theologians, while the New Testament provides some details about Jesus' burial, it doesn't offer exact specifics. One aspect often questioned is the napkin, which is rarely mentioned. Comparing the gospel accounts of Jesus' suffering with the description of the man on the shroud reveals striking similarities. The man on the shroud bore numerous injuries, including cuts to the scalp, bruises on the face, and over 120 wounds from a severe beating. He carried a heavy object on his shoulders, leaving marks on his shoulder blades, and fell, resulting in bruises on his knees. Most notably, he displayed 5 major wounds associated with crucifixion, puncture wounds in both wrists and feet, and a pierce in the right side of the chest, from which blood mixed with watery liquid flowed. Pathologists noted signs of rigor mortis, distinguishing wounds as pre- or post-mortem. The resemblance between Jesus' ordeal, as described in the Gospels, and the wounds on the shroud is compelling. Additionally, both Jesus and the man on the shroud experienced uncommon events, such as wearing a crown of thorns and enduring severe beatings. Unlike typical crucifixion victims whose legs were broken, neither Jesus nor the man on the shroud had their ankles broken. Instead, they were pierced in the chest after death. Both were individually buried in expensive linen hastily. Given these unique similarities, scholars have concluded that it's highly improbable for 2 different individuals to undergo such identical crucifixion experiences. Some studies suggest there is a 1 in 225 billion chance that they are different persons. Even skeptical calculations show incredibly low probabilities that Jesus and the man on the shroud are not the same. Their experiences align without contradictions, strengthening the case for their identity. Throughout centuries, the Shroud of Turin has been revered as Jesus's genuine burial cloth, passed down as a sacred relic. Unlike recently discovered artifacts merely associated with Jesus, the shroud has always been seen as authentic, predating modern scientific scrutiny. This enduring belief reinforces the connection between Jesus and the figure depicted on the shroud. While we can't definitively confirm the identity of the man in the shroud, there are compelling reasons to believe it could be Jesus's actual burial garment. Many details align perfectly without any discrepancies, supported by scientific consensus that the artifact is genuine, not a forgery. Evidence for Jesus's resurrection. When considering evidence for the resurrection of Jesus, the Shroud of Turin presents three compelling arguments. Firstly, unlike other burial shrouds that only show blood and decomposition stains, the shroud uniquely features a detailed image of a body. This double-body image is visible in both positive and negative forms, suggesting it was created by a burst of light or heat. Recent experiments support this theory, indicating radiation emanating from a body resembling Jesus. These findings have profound implications for understanding the resurrection, especially when combined with historical accounts. Scientific studies have shown that the Shroud of Turin, believed by many to be the burial cloth of Jesus Christ, displays unusual characteristics. Researchers have observed that the cloth shows very little decomposition, indicating that the body it once covered did not stay in contact with it for a long time. This is surprising because in the warm climate of the Middle East, decomposition typically occurs rapidly. Moreover, pathologists who examined the shroud found no signs that it was unwrapped from the body after burial. Instead, they discovered that the cloth came into direct contact with the body, with bloodstains appearing to transfer directly onto it and even becoming partially attached. The blood clots seen in the wounds and the clear borders of these stains suggest that the body remained undisturbed within the shroud. These findings add to the mystery and debate surrounding the shroud's origin and authenticity. Skeptics may propose various reasons why a body might be removed from a burial cloth, but the intact blood clots and undisturbed stains support the argument that the body was likely left undisturbed within the shroud, potentially strengthening its case as an authentic artifact. The Shroud of Turin presents several intriguing mysteries supported by scientific analysis. Firstly, the cloth shows little to no signs of decomposition, suggesting the body it covered was not in prolonged contact with it. Despite this, there are no indications that the body was unwrapped or removed, as evidenced by intact blood clots and undisturbed bloodstains. Adding to the mystery is the possibility of a burst of radiation emitted by the body, which further fascinates researchers. What makes this evidence even more compelling is that it is empirical and scientifically verifiable. Together, these points create a strong body of evidence that sparks curiosity and debate about the origins and authenticity of the Shroud of Turin. The authenticity of the Shroud of Turin has been a subject of intense debate and fascination for centuries. The shroud bears the imprint of a man who appears to have suffered wounds consistent with crucifixion, which aligns closely with the biblical account of Jesus Christ. This alignment has led many to believe that the shroud could indeed be the burial cloth of Jesus. The scientific analyses, including the lack of decomposition, the presence of intact blood clots, and the unusual image formation that some suggest could be due to a burst of radiation, contribute to the compelling nature of the shroud's authenticity claims. These findings have prompted some to argue that the shroud could be a physical artifact linked to Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection. However, skepticism remains. Critics question aspects such as the age of the cloth, the nature of the image formation, and the historical documentation of its existence prior to the Middle Ages. These doubts highlight the complexity of verifying the shroud's authenticity beyond a reasonable doubt. Ultimately, whether one believes the Shroud of Turin to be authentic depends on personal interpretation of the evidence, religious beliefs, and historical analysis. The ongoing research and debate surrounding the shroud continue to fuel intrigue and discussion among scholars, scientists, and the public alike. What do you think about the authenticity of the Shroud of Turin? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.